Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, sponsored by ACR Poker, where we are in the middle of double Venom Mania. That's right, we have two different Venoms running throughout the month of October. A $5 million Venom PKO that I cannot wait to play in myself. And there's also a $1.5 million PLO Venom that I might also dip my toes in that water as well. My name is Clayton Fletcher, and I am in gorgeous, tranquil Roanoke, Virginia. Happy to be bringing you yet another episode of the longest running poker strategy podcast of all time. This weekend I am appearing at the Jefferson Center in Roanoke, Virginia, where I will be presenting The Power of Laughter based on my book, The ROI of LOL. But that's not why we're here today. We're here for poker, and I got some really good feedback on last week's episode and on the recent discussions around this $2.50 accumulator tournament that we've been delving into recently. But today I'm going to do something a little bit different. In just a minute, I'm going to review a hand that we talked about last week from that tournament. But then I want to get into some hands that people have been posting for strategy discussion on the TPE Discord, which, by the way, if you're not yet on that, you can just join. You know, it's free. Just click the link in the description and be part of the discussion. We have a channel where we talk about the free roll, which I will be hosting once again this Sunday. I hope you guys can come back and join me for that. Last Sunday was so much fun. A lot of fun figuring out how to make the free roll happen and get as many of our regular listeners and subscribers in there as possible. It's always a cat and mouse game, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, I'll be doing that this Sunday. But yeah, you guys have to get on the Discord, right? We've got a free roll section, we've got a strategy section, we've got other topics, and you can join absolutely free. First off, I want to give a shout out to my friend Maria Konnikova, who won her first bracelet. It's an online bracelet. She beat 450 some odd players in the WSOP.com 888 tournament, which I think she actually played it on GG Poker. I'm not 100% sure the exact details, but you know, there's been a little bit of backlash about these online bracelets. And listen, guys, I've been playing poker for 25 plus years and taking the game very seriously all that time. I want you guys to know that winning a World Series of Poker bracelet, and I don't care whether it's the 888 online or a $300 online or the $5,300 online high roller or the live 10K PLO 8 or better. Listen, these bracelets are not easy to obtain. The record all time since 1979 is 17 total bracelets, and that's Phil Hellmuth, a guy that plays every single event every single year. So I don't want anyone to disparage anyone else who's ever claimed a gold bracelet. Now, with that being said, obviously not all bracelets are created equal. For some of them, you can't be in certain parts of the country to participate. For some of them, you have to be in one of 3 states to play. For others, you have to be in a certain province in Canada to play. But still, anytime there is that kind of prestigious hardware at stake, there will be a lot of competition to try to claim it. And Maria did her thing. Some of the criticism came from people who think it's unfair that she bought in 4 times, but each bracelet has its own set of rules, right? So if I play this summer in the, whatever they're going to call it, the Gladiator of Poker or whatever the $300 bracelet event is, before I even plunk down my first buy-in, I will know what the rules are. Some bracelets, like the main event, are freeze-outs. Other bracelets, you can buy in once per flight. They all have their own rules. and everyone has to play by those rules. So then to go back and start criticizing someone after the fact because, well, it shouldn't really be that big a deal if you bought in 4 times because you had to bankroll that some of the other players didn't have that kind of bankroll. Look, yada, yada, yada. I don't want to hear it. I think winning a bracelet is a great accomplishment. And as long as you didn't do any actual cheating, I don't think anyone should disparage that bracelet. Now, I think Maria is a very good poker player. She is getting better every day. And she is probably going to claim more bracelets in the future. And I don't care what any of her haters have to say about that. All right, let's move on to the hand that we talked about at the end of last week's episode. This was late in the money of a $2.50 buy-in accumulator tournament that had literally thousands of entries. So I want to go back and look at this hand again, and this time we're going to run it through GTO Wizard, which is my favorite solver. It's a tool that can help you improve your poker game. You can practice any spot. You can look at different solver outputs. You can put up your hands from your online tournaments. You can upload them to the software, and the software will help you find holes in your game. And if you guys are interested in joining the GTO Wizard Revolution, I have a great deal for you. Click the link in the description, and that's our affiliate link, and will grant you 24 hours access to all of GTO Wizard's features, and then you'll save 10% off your first purchase at gtowizard.com. But you have to use our affiliate code in order to get that discount down the line, and that link is gtowizard.com/p/TPE. So just to review the hand, the blinds were 4,000 and 8,000 with a 1,200 ante, so there's 9,600 in the middle. As the cards are being dealt, we had about 530,000 chips when the average was right around 250. The action folded to the cutoff, a loose aggressive player who opened to 16,000 off of a stack of 320K, about 40 big blinds, and I was next to act on the button, and I'm the hero holding the king of hearts, deuce of hearts, and I went for a 3-bet to 58,000, which villain called from out of position. So let's talk about that first. Let's use the solver. GTO Wizard never 3-bets with the king deuce suited. In fact, in this situation, off of these stacks, my hand is a pure fold. It's a 100% fold, but I will say that beginning at king 4 suited, we do start to see some VPIP from the button. So although my hand was a little bit too wide, maybe a little bit too loose, the idea isn't that far off. For example, with king 5 suited, we're supposed to 3-bet this 50% of the time and call the rest, never folding king 5 suited, but always folding king deuce suited. So that's how close it is. So I'm not really going to give myself credit for this one, but I realized that I was making an exploitative play kind of based on the fact that I noticed the cutoff had been playing a very loose, aggressive style, and I wanted to exploit that. And I knew that having the king would be a good blocker, and being suited is also good. So my idea was right, but sadly, GTO Wizard does not approve. So villain called, and we saw a flop of king 8-7 with 2 spades, and with 134 in the pot, villain checked, and I c-bet 67K, so 1/2 the pot, and opponent check raised. So let's first talk about my decision to bet half the pot here. We do bet quite a bit when we flop the top pair with a suited king like king 5 suited, but we almost never choose such a large sizing. We only bet half the pot less than 1% of the time, 0.8% of the time with king 5 suited. So what sizing should we be doing? Much smaller, guys, like maybe a quarter pot. That's where most of the betting is. There's also about 30% of the time we want to be checking back, even though we've made top pair. So the solver does not really approve of any of my decisions yet in this hand. So let's continue. I got check raised, a very small check raise. Villain made it 156, leaving himself with 120,000. Now, guys, at this stack depth, and holding the ace 10 suited, having flopped the nut flush draw. Versus this sizing, villain should never actually check raise, because doing so is basically just going all in. So you're risking your whole tournament against an opponent who has now 3-bet pre-flop and now c-bet half the pot. Now, even though I'm never actually supposed to do that with my exact holding, there are some half-pot c-bets in Hero's range. I just don't happen to have one. And the problem for villain is he has very little fold equity given the amount of strength that I'm showing. So why do you want to get it in? You know you're behind. You've just got ace high with a lot of potential. You won't often have much fold equity, and your pot equity when called is not all that great. So yeah, solver doesn't like the way villain's playing this hand either, because he did go for the check raise when he's actually got a pure 100% call with what we now know he had, which was the ace 10 of spades. So in my shoes, I was supposed to have bet smaller. In villain's shoes, he was supposed to call because I didn't bet smaller. And now he check raised and I'm supposed to go all in, which I did, which is actually the first correct play I've made according to GTO Wizard in this entire hand. So I shoved, villain called, and somehow my hand held up versus opponent's 12 out draw. And I went on to claim the chip lead from that point in the tournament. I'm not going to continue this tournament today. But guys, I think we can see very clearly the value of using a study tool such as GTO Wizard to improve your game. I mean, this computer is way better at poker than I'll ever be and than you'll ever be. It's an artificial intelligence, perfect robot who never makes any mistakes and plays everything with a perfectly balanced, unexploitable range. And knowing what that range is, we don't necessarily have to do it 100% of the time. For example, in this hand, I might still go for the 3-bet pre-flop, even though, technically speaking, King Deuce is in the folding range. King Deuce suited, I should say, is in the folding range. But because my opponent was opening so much, maybe I still would play it this way. But when you deviate from a GTO strategy, you should know what you're deviating from exactly and why. And so this guy was a bit too wide. I felt like maybe 3-betting a little bit more often was a good adjustment. So the idea is never to just try to emulate or perfect the GTO strategy. No one's that good. We're not going to be able to solve every single spot all the time. Nobody can do that. No human brain, anyway, at least today, can do that. But what we do learn is what are the patterns, where are the holes, where are the leaks in my game, where should I be being more or less aggressive in my strategy versus any opponent, human or not. All right, well, let's continue on. I want to do something a little bit different today. We're going to look at the TPE Discord at a strategy hand that I was looking at just the other day. A user named Keck442 is playing in a $40 buy-in tournament with 120 players remaining and 50 of those players to be paid. So we're not yet in the money, although it appears that registration has closed. The blinds in this hand are 700 and 1400 with a 140 ante per player. And Hero is in the big blind with ace deuce offsuit. He's got 32,000 in chips, so just about 25 big blinds. He's at an 8-handed table, and the player in third position opens to 3,500, which is about 2.3 big blinds. And then the next player folds, the cutoff calls, and the small blind calls as well. And so now what should we do in the big blind with the ace of diamonds, deuce of spades? And my play here is to shove. There's already 13,000 in the middle. We've only got about 32,000 in the stack. I think we should have plenty of fold equity, shoving 25 big blinds in this situation and picking up all that dead money a lot of the time. When we are called, we will sometimes be dominated by a hand like ace king or ace queen, but we will often just be a 30% chance of winning versus a hand like pocket kings. I think the risk to reward ratio here is favorable for us. When we're called, we're going to have 20 to 30% equity all the time, unless villain shows up with pocket aces, which is pretty darn hard for him to do when we have the ace of diamonds. And I just think we're going to take it down enough to make it profitable. This is something I've talked about on several other podcasts, where I coined the term the big squeeze, and I call it the big squeeze because it's a raise and then more than one call. So now there's more of a pot for us to get after. So I would get after it here. I want to know what you guys would think. I can tell you that some of the comments in the TPE Discord, most of you guys are not taking this spot. A user named Sean says, personally, I don't, because I'd rather have a bit more equity if the squeeze gets called. Ace deuce suited maybe, but I feel like there will be better spots that far away from the money. Well, that's a good point. We're not that close to the money yet, but to me, that's all the more reason why we want to start building the stack and take our chance right here and now. You guys realize we can increase our stack by almost 40% if we raise and take it. If we shove and increase our stack by 40%, we're going to be in much better shape overall in the tournament. I'm assuming the average stack in this tournament is about 35 or 40 big blinds, which is pretty typical for a $40 online tournament. So that means shoving and picking up the dead money that's out there now will put us right around the average stack. Increasing our stack by 40% at this stage in the tournament is absolutely worth it. And we've got an ace. I think I might even make this play without an ace. I would probably do this with a hand like Jack 8 suited, because the big squeeze is just a really powerful play. I don't know what the solver's going to say about that, but I know that what Clayton says is pull the trigger. By the way, shout out to this user, Sean, in the TPE Discord. He has been posting in the strategy channel quite a bit. I want to read another one of his posts, this one from September 24th. He says, guys, I think I made a big mistake today on the final table bubble of the ACR OSS XL 1650. With 10 players left, I was 7th of 10 with about 19 big blinds under the gun with pocket sixes, and I raised it to 2.5x before under the gun plus one jams for just over 11 big blinds. In the moment, I felt like I had to call, and I'm not sure if I'm being results oriented now in my thinking or not. Shout out to Sean, not only for posting a lot, but for posting honestly. It is very hard not to be results oriented, but it sounds like, spoiler alert, he's about to lose this hand. This player had been jamming, collecting blinds to stay alive, and I did not put him on a premium pocket pair. Unfortunately, he had ace king, and it held, leaving me with right at 6 big blinds and next up on the big blind. A few hands later, I busted as the bubble boy. Should I have even opened pocket sixes under the gun off of a 19 big blind stack on the final table bubble? Just not sure if I should have been putting myself into a coin flip spot there. Well, to me, this gets to be an ICM question more than anything else. Obviously, we're in the money, a $16 OSS XL tournament. We are about to hit the final table. What is your philosophy? Do you care about the pay jumps, or do you want to play this tournament for first place? I'll bet shoving pocket sixes is probably plus EV. He says there are 10 players left. So under the gun, that means he's at a 5-handed table under the gun, right? With 10 players left, it must be 5 and 5. So we're very, very short-handed. Any pocket pair 5-handed is probably good. And there's nothing wrong with just shoving, I think. It's also, of course, fine to open this hand, but I don't agree with the sizing. I think if you don't want to shove because 19 big blinds just feels like too much, I think it's fine to just min raise to 2x. But what I don't like is this 2.5x when our stack gets this short. The shorter your stack, the smaller your opens need to be. Like if you're playing 100 big blinds and you want to open 2.5x, no problem there. But with just 19 bigs, it costs too much to have that extra half a big blind for those times when you open and then fold to a 3-bet. which I assume you're going to have some hands that want to do that, which is why you should be min raising in the first place. He says, in the moment I felt like I had to call. Well, obviously the player only had 11 big blinds. You've already put in 2.5. Of course you need to call. And if you knew he had ace king, you should beat him into the pot. Because what we're trying to do as we approach the final table is to build a big stack, right? I mean, there's no big bonus for just making the final table, right? In most of the tournaments on ACR Poker, it's about winning first place. So in my opinion, we want to be aggressive when other players are being tight. So the final table bubble, as you call it, is in some ways an artificial milestone where some players might want to play a little bit tighter just so they can tell people, or I don't know, brag about it. I made the final table of this big tournament on ACR, which, by the way, is very hard to do. So you should brag about it. But you shouldn't want to brag about it badly enough to decrease your chances of winning the first place prize, which I'm sure was a very large sum of money. Now, the real question is, what's the difference between 10th place and 9th place, not the difference between 9th place and first place? Is it worth it to try to get to 9th place, right? So if 10th place was like $350, but for some reason 9th place, just because it's the final table, paid like $2,000, then I could see a better case for wanting to be more conservative with pocket sixes. But still, when you're at a 5-handed table because there are only 10 players left, I can't really imagine any scenario where Clayton's not going to play pocket sixes under the gun. I really can't. So yeah, I don't blame you for getting involved. I'm sorry you lost your flip, but I do think that in this case we do have a case of results-oriented thinking, and that he probably never even posts this hand to the strategy channel of the TPE Discord had he won the pot. Anyway, that'll do it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps us out when you guys do those things. Also, make sure you guys follow me on Twitter. And if you are in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, please come out and see me. I'll be performing at the Lonerider Brewery in Raleigh, North Carolina, which, by the way, is owned by TPE head honcho himself, Derek Killingbird Tenbush, who will not be there, but I can make up for that and then some, because my opening act is none other than Bath Girl herself. Marnie B will be performing alongside me that night, October 24th. You can get tickets by clicking the link, the ticket link, in the description of this podcast. And for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, with special thanks, as always, to our very generous sponsor, ACR Poker, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas plays. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart.